Turn off the news for just a second and look at what actually happened. On January 3rd, 2026, the United States launched Operation Absolute Resolve. Over 150 aircraft hit northern Venezuela and Caracas starting around 2 a.m. local time. Nicolas Maduro and his wife Celia Flores were captured by special forces and flown to New York City. At least 40 people died in the strikes. The Trump administration says this was about narco-terrorism and drug trafficking. But here's the problem with that story. Just 2 weeks before this raid, Trump pardoned one Orlando Hernandez, the former Honduran president who was literally in prison for the exact same charges. So clearly, this isn't about drugs. This is about something much bigger, something they don't want you to see. Venezuela sits on top of the Orinoco belt, the largest proven oil reserves on the entire planet. We're talking about 303 billion barrels of crude oil. That's more than Saudi Arabia's 267 billion barrels. That's more than 6 times what the United States has. At current market prices, even in a struggling economy, that oil underground is worth trillions of dollars. Now ask yourself this simple question. Do you really believe the most powerful military on earth mobilized its advanced forces, risked American lives, and violated international law just because they care about Venezuelan voting rights? History tells a different story. In 2003, they told us Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. Those weapons never existed, but the oil contracts were real. In 2011, they said Libya was about protecting civilians from Muammar Gaddafi. But Gaddafi was planning a gold-backed African currency that would bypass the dollar. Now in 2026, the script is exactly the same. Only the target has changed. To understand why this happened now, you need to understand what the petrodollar actually is. In 1971, President Richard Nixon ended the gold standard. The Bretton Woods system collapsed. Suddenly, nobody needed to hold dollars anymore because dollars weren't backed by anything. The American economy was in serious trouble. So in 1974, Nixon and his Secretary of State Henry Kissinger made a deal with the Saudi royal family. The terms were crystal clear. America would provide military protection for Saudi oil fields. In exchange, Saudi Arabia would price all of their oil exclusively in US dollars. This was the birth of the petrodollar system. Think about what this means. Every nation on earth needs oil. If you're France and you need energy, you have to buy dollars first. If you're Japan and you need to fuel your economy, you need dollars first. This created permanent artificial demand for American currency. It allowed the Federal Reserve to print trillions of dollars without facing the normal consequences. We exported inflation to the rest of the world while we got real goods, real cars, real electronics for pieces of paper. It was the greatest financial privilege in modern history. But that system is dying right now. Saudi Arabia has openly stated they are willing to trade oil in other currencies. The BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, along with new members like the UAE, Iran, Egypt, and Ethiopia, are systematically dismantling dollar dominance. In 2024, 90% of Russia's trade within BRICS was conducted in local currencies. China and Russia now do most of their bilateral trade in yuan and rubles. India is buying Russian oil in rupees. In 2023, 1/5 of global oil trades were conducted in non-dollar currencies. By early 2025, that number climbed to 24%. The world is building a shield against the dollar. They're creating the BRICS Bridge payment system, an alternative to the American-controlled SWIFT network. China's cross-border interbank payment system, known as CIPS, now connects 1,467 financial institutions in 111 countries, linking 4,800 banks across 185 nations. And then there's Venezuela. Intelligence reports suggested that Caracas was about to make the final move. They were preparing to officially integrate their entire energy sector into China's CIPS payment system. They were going to price their oil, the largest reserves on Earth, in a basket of currencies led by the yuan and potentially backed by gold. If that had happened, it would have sent shockwaves through the global financial system. It would have proven that you can possess massive wealth outside the American banking system and survive. That was the red line Washington could not allow to be crossed. Now look at the timing. The U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserve sits at just 409 million barrels. That's the lowest level since the reserve was created in the 1970s. The Biden administration drained over 290 million barrels in 2022, the largest drawdown in history, using emergency reserves to lower gas prices before an election. The tank meant for war and national emergencies was used to buy votes. Meanwhile, America has a specific problem nobody talks about. The shale revolution produces light, sweet crude, like champagne. But American refineries in Texas and Louisiana were built 50 years ago to process heavy sour crude from the Middle East and Venezuela. We produce the wrong type of oil for our own infrastructure. Saudi Arabia used to solve this problem, but Riyadh is cutting production, joining BRICS, ignoring White House phone calls. Russia is sanctioned. Canada is at maximum capacity. That left only one option: Venezuela's heavy crude in the Orinoco belt. Here's what happened next. On January 3rd, American forces didn't just capture Maduro. They secured the Orinoco belt. Trump openly said on Fox News that the U.S. will be very strongly involved in Venezuela's oil industry. The opposition leader Maria Corina Machado already promised to privatize the entire oil sector, invite American companies like Chevron and Exxon back in, and make Venezuela Israel's closest ally in Latin America. The new government's first act will be forcing all oil contracts back into U.S. dollars. They're trying to plug the leak in the Petrodollar dam at gunpoint. But here's the fatal flaw in this strategy. You can invade one country. Maybe you can invade two. But you cannot invade the entire world. Every nation in the global south is watching this right now. They're watching and thinking. If we refuse to sell our resources in dollars, will they come for us next? This doesn't create loyalty. It creates an exodus. The raid on Venezuela isn't saving the petrodollar. It's burying it, and the grave is already dug.
The United States has just declared it will militarily occupy Venezuela after conducting one of the most audacious special operations in modern history. Last night, American special forces flew into Caracas, captured President Nicolas Maduro right out of his compound, and extracted him to a US warship before anyone could react. This morning, Maduro sits in the Metropolitan Detention Center in New York City, facing narcotics and weapons charges. But here's what nobody saw coming. The Venezuelan government didn't collapse. Their military is still intact, still armed, and now on the highest alert status. We're watching something unprecedented unfold, and the implications stretch far beyond Venezuela's borders. Let's talk about what actually happened, because the details read like a Hollywood script. Except, this is real. Around 2 a.m. local time, helicopters from the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment crossed into Venezuelan airspace. These aren't regular helicopters. These are specially modified MH-60 Blackhawks and CH-47 Chinooks equipped for long-range infiltration missions. At the exact same moment, F-35 Lightning stealth fighters struck Venezuela's air defense network. They hit Pantsir S-1 and Buk M2 missile systems at Carlota Air Base and Higuerote Air Base, essentially blinding Venezuela's ability to track or shoot down aircraft. Then they struck Fort Tiuna, which is Venezuela's version of the Pentagon, taking out communications towers and command buildings. The operation was surgical. Within 2.5 hours, Maduro was aboard the USS Iwo Jima in the Caribbean. No American deaths. A few wounded soldiers who were medevaced to Roosevelt Roads Naval Station in Puerto Rico. Venezuela's $6 billion worth of Russian air defense equipment didn't stop a single aircraft. Now here's where the official story gets interesting. Initially, this was sold as an anti-cartel operation. The administration talked about fentanyl, about cocaine trafficking, about taking down narco-terrorists. But watch what happened at the press conference just hours after Maduro's capture. The president said, and I'm quoting here, "We're going to have our very large United States oil companies, the biggest anywhere in the world, go in and spend billions of dollars, fix the badly broken infrastructure, and start making money for the country and also for ourselves." The drug war justification got dropped faster than a hot potato. Suddenly, this became about Venezuela's oil fields. Venezuela has the world's largest proven oil reserves, larger than Saudi Arabia, and those fields have been deteriorating under Maduro's mismanagement for years. American oil executives are apparently ready to move in immediately. But capturing Maduro was just phase one, and this is the critical part everyone needs to understand. The president didn't just say Maduro was going to trial. He said, We're going to run the country until such time as we can have a safe, proper, and judicious transition. That's not regime change. That's military occupation. He compared it to Douglas MacArthur governing Japan after World War II, which lasted 10 years from 1945 to 1955. The administration is talking about installing Marco Rubio and Pentagon officials as the interim governing authority, not the Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado, who everyone assumed would take over. She apparently got sidelined at the last minute, called too weak to lead. So, now we have American officials preparing to directly govern a foreign country of 28 million people. Here's the problem nobody's talking about enough. Maduro is gone, but his government isn't. The Minister of Defense is still free, still organizing resistance. The Vice President reportedly fled to Russia, but that's unconfirmed. The military chain of command never broke. This morning, Venezuelan F-16 Falcons and Su-30 fighter jets scrambled from El Libertador Air Base. Yes, they're completely outmatched. Those jets are only carrying AIM-9 Sidewinder short-range missiles with a 3 to 5 mile range, while American jets carry AIM-1T AMRAAM missiles that can hit targets 70 to 90 miles away. It's not even a fair fight. But the point is they're still fighting. The streets of Caracas are empty, not because people are celebrating, but because they're terrified. Some neighborhoods are cheering Maduro's removal, but the government structure is preparing for guerrilla warfare. Military analysts are already making Vietnam comparisons, but the situation is actually different in one crucial way. In Vietnam, North Vietnam had direct land access to China and the Soviet Union. Supplies could flow constantly over land borders. Venezuela is geographically isolated. Colombia to the east might help, but their president isn't risking a similar fate. Brazil shares a border, but it's in the middle of the Amazon rainforest with zero infrastructure. There are no roads connecting Brazilian cities to Venezuela through that jungle. Russia and China are condemning this loudly, calling it a violation of sovereignty, which is rich coming from countries currently violating Ukraine's and Taiwan's sovereignty. But they can't easily resupply Venezuelan resistance fighters. The best they can do is fly cargo on IL-76 transport planes into Tehran Imam Khomeini International Airport, and even that's getting noticed. From a legal standpoint, this is black and white. International law experts are unanimous. This violates Article 2, Paragraph 4 of the UN Charter, which prohibits the threat or use of force against another state's territorial integrity or political independence. There are only two exceptions: UN Security Council authorization or legitimate self-defense against an armed attack. Neither applies here. Even if you could prove Venezuela was shipping drugs, that doesn't legally justify invasion and kidnapping a head of state. Maduro has sovereign immunity as a sitting president. The International Court of Justice has been clear about this for decades, but the US isn't asking permission, and that's creating a massive precedent problem. The strategic question is whether America can handle this right now. Over 20% of US naval forces are currently deployed around Venezuela in the Second Fleet area. Meanwhile, Iran is in the middle of a revolution with armed clashes between rebels and the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. And China just conducted Operation Justice Mission 2025 around Taiwan with hundreds of aircraft. The military is stretched across three potential major conflicts simultaneously. If Venezuela turns into a prolonged occupation, requiring 100,000 troops on the ground, where do those forces come from? What happens next depends entirely on whether Venezuelan resistance fades or intensifies over the coming weeks. If the military fractures and surrenders, this could be over in months. If they retreat into the mountains and cities for guerrilla warfare, we're looking at years. Either way, the world just watched America openly violate international law and declare it will occupy a sovereign nation for its oil. That's not speculation, that's what was said at the press conference. China and Russia are taking notes, and the post-World War II rules-based international order just took another massive hit. In the dead of night, on January 2nd, 2026, over 150 American aircraft converged on Caracas in what President Donald Trump called the most audacious military operation since World War II. The target wasn't a terrorist compound or a weapons facility. It was Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and his wife Cecilia, who are now in US custody aboard the USS Bataan. Trump posted the raid footage himself on Truth Social, soundtrack to Fortunate Son, showing explosions ripping through the Venezuelan capital. Within hours, he declared something that sent shockwaves through Beijing, Moscow, and Tehran. We're going to run Venezuela until such time as a proper transition can take place. But this wasn't just a regional operation gone rogue. This was the United States crossing a red line that China, Russia, and Iran had been warning about for years. And now the question everyone's asking is, what comes next? China's foreign ministry issued a statement calling the operation deeply shocked and a blatant violation of international law. But here's what makes this explosive. A Chinese envoy was meeting with Maduro just hours before American forces struck. Think about that timing. Chinese officials were potentially on the ground or narrowly missed being there when US troops moved in. For Beijing, this isn't just about Venezuela, it's about precedent. If Washington can militarily remove a leader of a country where China has invested billions, where does it stop? And China has invested heavily. By October 2025, China was importing 663,000 barrels of Venezuelan oil every single day, representing a massive 80% of all the oil Venezuela was selling to the world. Meanwhile, the United States was receiving a mere 128,000 barrels per day. This wasn't an accident. It was the result of a catastrophic American strategy that started in early 2025. Let me take you back. In April 2025, the US government rolled out what economists called a financial nuclear option, secondary tariffs. The mechanism was brutal. Washington warned every nation on Earth that if they bought even a single barrel of Venezuelan oil, they would face a 25% tariff on all exports to the United States. Not just oil, everything. Electronics, furniture, agricultural products. The average US tariff hovers around 2%, so this 25% tax would make any country's goods uncompetitive overnight. The goal was mathematically simple: reduce Venezuela's oil exports to zero. But American policymakers made a fatal miscalculation. They assumed no rational nation would risk access to the $20 trillion US economy for a deal with Venezuela. They didn't account for China. By 2025, China and the US were already deep in a trade war. Chinese exports had been facing significant tariffs for years. So when Washington threatened a new 25% tariff, Beijing's economists did the math and realized this wasn't a deterrent. It was merely an adjustment to existing reality. More importantly, China saw the opportunity. With every other potential buyer scared away from India to European nations to traditional Latin American partners, Venezuela's oil suddenly became available at unprecedented discounts. China wasn't just becoming a buyer among many, they were becoming the only buyer left standing. And they made a statement about it. In September 2025, a Chinese company called China Conquered installed the first major new offshore oil platform in Venezuela's Maracaibo Lake in years. This wasn't modest. It was a massive billion-dollar investment signaling China's intentions to ramp up production from 12,000 barrels per day to a staggering 60,000 barrels per day by 2026. While the United States was actively trying to shut down Venezuela's oil industry, China was simultaneously investing over $1 billion to build it back up under their own control. But there's an even deeper chain binding Venezuela to China, one that makes their relationship virtually unbreakable. That chain is debt. Over more than a decade, China has loaned Venezuela a staggering $60 billion. This isn't traditional cash being paid back through international banking systems. Venezuela repays this massive debt directly with oil shipments. It's a closed-loop system that makes US sanctions completely irrelevant. Venezuela must send oil to China to service debt obligations, and China is legally entitled to receive that oil as repayment under international law. Even if the US wanted to stop this particular oil flow, they would face an impossible dilemma. They'd be literally telling Venezuela to break an international financial agreement, which would undermine the entire global financial system that America itself relies on. This is why Beijing's response to Maduro's capture is so measured, yet so ominous. Russia quickly followed with its own condemnation, calling the operation armed aggression and warning that ideological hostility has replaced diplomacy. Moscow's foreign ministry said escalation could spiral beyond control. Iran's foreign ministry issued a lengthy statement calling it a clear breach of sovereignty that sets a dangerous precedent. What we're witnessing is China, Russia, and Iran lining up in coordinated condemnation. These aren't just words. Just months earlier, in September 2025, Chinese President Xi Jinping stood shoulder to shoulder with Russia's Vladimir Putin and North Korea's Kim Jong-un at a massive military parade in Beijing. Over 12,000 People's Liberation Army troops marched while China unveiled hypersonic missiles and autonomous combat drones. That parade was a warning. This Venezuela operation is testing whether that alliance was just theater or something more substantial. Trump explicitly invoked the Monroe Doctrine, the 200-year-old policy claiming American dominance in the Western Hemisphere. He even renamed it the Donroe Document in his unique pronunciation, declaring that American dominance will never be questioned again. But here's the problem. China already has the economic infrastructure in place across Latin America. In November 2025, just 2 months before this raid, Beijing and Caracas signed a zero-tariff trade agreement covering 400 different types of products. This wasn't just about oil anymore. It was about weaving Venezuela's entire economy into China's global supply chain. Trump can occupy Caracas with military force, but China already owns the economic foundation. And as we learned from 2025's failed sanctions strategy, military power doesn't always translate to strategic victory. Maduro is in US custody, but Venezuela's future may already belong to China. And Beijing is not known for accepting losses quietly.